He was Israel's most decorated soldier, then its prime minister. Now, Ehud Barak stands accused of being a national security liability. This is not just about politics. This is about corruption, espionage, and a trail of scandals that some experts warn could compromise an entire nation's security. For our Kenyan viewers, this is a stark lesson in how the powerful operate. The story is explosive, and it's unfolding right now. To understand the gravity of these allegations, we must go back. Ehud Barak's career is a tapestry of Israeli history. He served as chief of the general staff, leading the military. He was prime minister from 1999 to 2001. He is often presented internationally as a voice of reason, a former leader of the Labour Party who advocates for peace. But for years, a darker narrative has shadowed his immense wealth and his post-political business dealings. The core question is this: how did a career public servant amass a fortune estimated at over $300 million? The timeline is crucial. After leaving office, Barak plunged into the private sector. He founded a lucrative consultancy. He joined boards. He gave high-priced speeches. And he cultivated deep, financially rewarding ties with foreign billionaires and governments. The current firestorm was ignited by two major investigative reports. One, from the Israeli newspaper Maariv, details his business ties with Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted sex offender and alleged intelligence asset. The other, a comprehensive analysis, outlines a pattern of engagements with figures linked to Chinese intelligence and other foreign interests. This isn't a new story suddenly appearing. It's the culmination of years of whispered concerns now bursting into public view. The key players are Barak himself, his network of wealthy associates, Israeli intelligence officials sounding the alarm, and the Israeli media digging into the finances of a man who once had access to the country's deepest secrets. Let's get into the core facts. The first scandal revolves around the late Jeffrey Epstein. According to the investigation, Ehud Barak had a much closer and more financial relationship with Epstein than previously disclosed. Reports state Barak visited Epstein's infamous New York townhouse multiple times. More critically, Barak's startup company, a startup Nation Central, received a multi-million-dollar investment from Epstein after Epstein was a registered sex offender. We're talking about a $2.3 million investment. Barak claims he cut ties when Epstein's crimes became clear, but the financial transaction happened after Epstein's 2008 conviction. This matters because intelligence agencies worldwide have long suspected Epstein of being a blackmail operative. Anyone in his orbit, especially a former prime minister with lifelong access to military and intelligence secrets, becomes a potential target for compromise. The second set of facts involves China. Barak has conducted extensive business there. He served on the international advisory board of a major Chinese conglomerate with deep ties to the Communist Party. He has given paid speeches in China and advised Chinese investment funds seeking deals in Israel, particularly in the very sensitive technology sector. Israel is a global tech powerhouse, especially in cybersecurity and dual-use military technology. Having a former prime minister and ex-military chief guiding Chinese capital toward these companies raises massive red flags. Official responses have been defensive. Barak dismisses the claims as a politically motivated smear campaign by Netanyahu supporters to silence his criticism. He frames his business dealings as legitimate private sector work, but intelligence experts quoted in the reports aren't buying it. They point to a fundamental ethical lapse. You cannot trade on your former office, especially one that gave you access to nuclear secrets and war plans, for personal profit without creating a severe national security risk. The key statistic is his wealth, from a public salary to over $300 million in a decade. The analysis is clear. This wealth pipeline originated from his status as a former prime minister, a status that foreign powers are very willing to pay for. Now, let's examine the different perspectives. Barak and his supporters frame this as an attack on free speech. They argue that by targeting his finances, the Netanyahu camp is trying to discredit a powerful critic and derail the anti-government protest movement Barak supports. They say his international stature allows him to advocate for Israel responsibly. The opposition viewpoint, led by security experts and some politicians, is far more severe. They see a clear pattern of influence peddling and a blatant conflict of interest. They argue that whether intentional or not, Barak has made himself vulnerable. When you take millions from a man like Epstein or advise Chinese interests, you create leverage. Could that leverage be used to soften his public statements on certain issues? To gain insights? The implications are profound. International reactions, while muted publicly, are likely concerned. Israel's closest ally, the United States, takes a dim view of former senior officials engaging with Chinese strategic interests. For Kenya, there's a direct lesson here. The security of a nation can be undermined not just by spies, but by the greed of its own elite. The deeper analysis points to a systemic problem, the blurry line between public service and private enrichment. Barak is not alone, he is a symptom. He leveraged his security clearances and insider knowledge to build a fortune. This means that sensitive knowledge, paid for by the Israeli taxpayer, is effectively for sale on the private market. The implication is that the decision-making of former leaders can be influenced by who pays them after they leave office. It calls into question the motives behind every speech, every op-ed, every piece of advice given by a formerly powerful figure. Is it for the public good, or for the benefit of a foreign billionaire who signed a check? So how does this affect ordinary people, whether in Israel or as a cautionary tale for Kenyans? First, trust. When citizens see a former leader become astronomically wealthy through questionable foreign ties, it erodes faith in the entire political system. It creates cynicism. People ask, were they serving the country, or were they building their portfolio? Second, economic implications. In Israel's case, if foreign investment in critical tech sectors is being guided by figures with conflicting loyalties, it could lead to the erosion of Israel's technological edge, the foundation of its economy. Sensitive innovations could be funneled to strategic competitors under the guise of business. For ordinary Kenyans, imagine if a former head of state or military chief began advising foreign interests on how to invest in our energy, telecommunications, or security sectors. The potential for lopsided deals and strategic compromise is enormous. Socially, it deepens divisions. Supporters of Barak see a witch hunt. His detractors see a traitor. This polarizes society further, making calm debate about national security impossible. The political ramification is a poisoned well. Every criticism Barak levels at Netanyahu is now met with, "You're funded by Epstein and China." It discredits legitimate opposition. What happens next? Calls for a formal security investigation are growing. There may be parliamentary inquiries. The story will continue to dog the anti-government protest movement, forcing them to distance themselves or defend him. The ultimate consequence could be a new legal framework in Israel restricting post-service activities of senior officials, a move many democracies desperately need. What are the experts saying? Security analysts are unequivocal. One former intelligence official called Barak's dealings a case study in how to become a security risk. They draw comparisons to other Western politicians who have cashed in on their offices, but note the scale here is different due to Israel's unique, perpetual security predicament. Comparisons are also made to retired American generals taking roles with foreign defense contractors. But again, the context of Israel's secretive military tech world makes it more dangerous. Legal experts point to the weakness of cooling-off laws. Predictions are grim. Experts forecast that without serious accountability, this model will become the norm. The next generation of leaders will see public office as a stepping stone to vast private wealth, with national security as a tradable commodity. The forecast is for more scandals, more erosion of public trust, and an increasing difficulty for intelligence agencies to vet their own former bosses. For Kenya, the insight is preventative. Strong, enforceable ethics laws that govern post-service conduct are not a luxury. They are a national security necessity. Waiting until a scandal erupts is too late. The key takeaway? The greatest threats to a nation can sometimes wear suits, not uniforms. Ehud Barak's story is a warning about corruption that masquerades as business and influence that borders on espionage. Watch for whether formal investigations are launched. Watch for how Israel handles a crisis created not by an enemy army, but by one of its own most celebrated sons. The line between statesman and security risk has never been thinner. Subscribe to Kenya News, update today for more breaking news.